I want to talk about what I call the decline and fall of the tower spire. I want to look at the spire itself when it fell. Again, these are the inner core columns, the last 15 seconds of the fall. First of all, again, this is a big structure. This spire was taller than the Washington Monument. And there's Building 7. It's taller than Building 7. Building 7's what, 47 floors, I think? Pretty big structure. Well, the spire is even taller. Okay. Good. So again, we saw that the perimeter is all gone here. But how could nuclear bombs have been so selective to leave these standing? And again, the steel was not being dustified. I'm saying that this steel was falling down through the smoke, through white smoke. And I'm saying there was probably multiple cuts bringing that spire down. Now, the directed energy folks are going to say, oh no, that steel was dustified. I'm saying, no, that steel fell down through the smoke.
You can see it falling frame by frame, actually.
You can see it.
Good Lord. There are no words. You can see large pieces of the building falling. You can see the smoke rising. You can see a portion of the side of the building now just being covered on the right side, as I look at it, covered in smoke.
So I thought about it. I wanted to do an experiment to demonstrate my hypothesis, if you will, that that was being segmented up and dropping through whatever was cutting it. So I did what I call a very simple experiment called the smoldering stick experiment. I started a fire in my backyard. We had a lot of debris left over from Hurricane Ann, so I just started burning it up. And then I grabbed an old fence post, an old cedar fence post. And I let it just get kind of toasted on the end there, not the rest of it, just the end of it. There's a piece of barbed wire sticking in my old fence post there.
So it's hanging from a...
I'm holding it. I'm on a ladder here and I'm holding it.
Oh, okay.
I'm on a ladder. I got my neighbor filming. I said, hey, come on over. I want to do a quick little experiment. I want to see what nature does here. So this is just smoldering. The whole stick is not on fire. I'm holding it with my hands. Just the tip was. And I just kind of threw it in that fire there for a while. Well, let's see what happens when that stick falls. Here it is falling down in slow motion. I'm going to do it again. I'm going to stop it. And what's happening? The stick falls, right? Obviously, the stick falls. Whoops. Let me come back here. I do this every time, it seems. Here comes the stick. The stick is falling, but the smoke can't fall. The smoke stays there, and it eclipses the stick.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I call this a falling stick. And so any object that's cut here, whether it's steel with cutter charges, those cutter charges can make the white smoke. And if there's multiple cutter charges, it'll make white smoke, but the smoke won't fall, the stick will fall. And that's what I believe is happening to the central core columns. The other motion I want to look at is there's actually two motions observed with that core column, with the spire falling. We have a nice video of this, and you can see a motion relative to the fixed building that's not moving in front. You're going to see first a sideways movement of this and then a downward. Okay, so sideways first and then down. I call it a diagonal decline. Okay, so the question is, what can cause what we're observing here? So here it is. Here's this fixed building in front. You see it move sideways? See it go sideways?
Yeah, it's like it's floating.
It looks like it's almost floating. It's going diagonally down. Well, what can cause a huge structure like that, taller than a Washington Monument, relative to anything fixed, to go diagonally down? Well, I thought about that for a while too, and I said, well, maybe I'll put together another experiment.
Uh-oh.
Now, let's see here. So, I used to be a woodcutter. I've cut lots and lots of trees. I've cut thousands of trees. I used to clear land and build roads. This is me back in 1980 in the middle of the woods. I know a little bit about dropping trees as well as you do and everybody else. And obviously, most of the time when you want to drop a tree, of course, you notch it. There's different kinds of notches, how you want to fell the tree, but you always leave a hinge and then you do your back cut. And that way you can direct the tree. Sometimes you put a loader or a chain on it if you want to fall it. But you want to make sure you leave that hinge or you're going to lose control if you're near a house or if it's a big tree. But if you're in the woods working, doing what we used to call weeding and thinning, and we're doing smaller trees and we don't care where that tree falls, we don't have time to make notches, or we don't need the time to make notches and be very careful about it. We just take our saw and we start cutting the back of it with no notch at all. And this is me. I just grabbed a saw, went out in my woods there, and I just wanted to show you the theory or the demonstration of a diagonally down motion. Here I am cutting. There it goes. It's going diagonally down. It's going sideways and down. Okay.
And that was like 3-4 times the width of the tree that it traveled, interestingly.
Yeah, yeah, it did. It slides down. You got to watch. You got to wear a hard hat. If this tree has limbs on it, sometimes it bonks you in the head. So you got to be careful. I know from experience, and I've cut a few trees in my life and got my head hit a few times. Maybe that's the way I am. I don't know. Maybe that's why I am. But again, I'm trying to mimic the motion. Now, sometimes, actually many times, when you're in the thick of the woods, this tree, once you cut it diagonally down, it'll get stuck because there's other trees around it up top. Yeah. And so what happens is the branch gets all fetched, if you will, in those other trees. So then you have to take your saw, and I do a back cut. Okay, and I'll slice backward at a 45, and it'll drop it down again, diagonally down. Well, imagine if I could do a back cut every 4 feet all at once. If I could do that, and I can't with a saw, but if I could, that tree would come straight down. So if we had shape charges all up and down that thing, it would make the diagonal down. But let's forget about trees. Let's look at what the professionals say. Let's see what the linear shape charge does.
The job of the shape charge is to cut steel H-beams.
The way we do this is by cutting the beam at an angle, which through a series of beams cut at the same angle will tend to make the building shift over and walk.
So he's saying that they do cut a series of them at an angle, very similar to what I'm doing with my tree. And here's just some diagrams you can get online. And he's saying that they cut them at an angle and they make the whole structure walk. Well, let's take a look at this. What do you think this was caused by when you observe this? Do you think it was a floor by floor pancake collapse? Was it a pile driver crush down, crush up phenomenon? No, for either of those. The floors are long gone. Is it being dustified by directed energy weapons? No, we can see it falling down. How about nuclear bombs? Again, why did that core column stay? If there was a nuclear bomb in the basement, why didn't it take out those core columns to begin with? And the sprinklers were long gone, and the airplane was long gone. So could shape charges cause this big structure to walk, and then subsequent shape charges all the way up that thing, cut that thing up, and make it fall straight down? Seems like that's possible to me. Again, it's diagonal and down.
You've convinced me.